everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Relentless Transitions Podcast. We are so excited. We have a great episode for you here today. You know that here at the Relentless Transitions Podcast, we talk about life, we talk about business, and triumph. And today we have a great one that goes across all three, life, business, and we are going to give you some tips on how to actually have triumph. So today, Miss Rosalind, I'm going to take the opportunity to interview Rosalind because I consider her to be the guru when it comes to facing your fears. And today we're talking about negativity, and sometimes that can really be stimulated by fear. But she's a guru when it comes to talking about facing your fears and pushing through. So, Miss Rosalind, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good, but a little bit like I'm on the hot seat.
Yes, we're on the hot seat. So, Miss, if you haven't watched that episode, then go back and watch our episode on financial self-care because Rosalind put me in the hot seat and interviewed me. So today I am turning the tables and we're going to interview her. But I know it's going to be good. So this episode is about negativity and about how to actually overcome. We're going to talk about where it comes from, but we're going to leave you with some tips on how to overcome. So how to handle those negative people in our lives. So Rosalind, we're going to just get right on into it and spill all of the tea. You ready?
I'm ready. Throw it at me, Teresa.
All right. So, I thought that a great place to start, just so to bring our audience in and let them know again that we're just regular old real people. And although we have learned some things about overcoming, that we still face challenges. So, can you give us an example of when you have experienced someone who just brought your mood down just by the way that they were acting?
Sure, it happens. It happens more often than you would think. And for me, my major source um, of this negativity spreading to me is when I have to talk to my mother, who is a very, very negative. She's just one of these people who has trouble seeing the good things in life. Instead, she wants to focus on all the crap that comes her way. But she's not the only one. I mean, there are a lot of people that just want to focus on the crap that comes their way instead of trying to find something to pull themselves out of that, something positive. Yeah. How about you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? I told y'all this is why I'm interviewing Rosalind. See, she came in hot, spilling, she just knocked the teacup all the way over. And here I am grazing the surface. But you know what? This is exciting because I know that I'm going to be able to ask her some questions about how do you handle negativity when it comes from a family member, when it's a stranger or if it's, a far off friend, you might be able to get away from it pretty quickly. But when it's a loved one or a significant other, that can be really, really tough. So I'm excited about today and what we're going to learn. So for me, I think, all of us have I've had a family experience, but I guess I will use the example of those good girlfriends. I think that we've all had, that one or two good girlfriends where you just loved them to death, but every time you spoke to them, they would just heap all of this. Everything was always bad. I don't care whether it was the weather, it just whatever. Everything was just so negative that when you get off the phone with them or you end your lunch or dinner date, you just want to go home and just throw yourself in the bed. So I've had people who are like that where I'm just so excited. And then by the time I get through speaking with them, I'm feeling overwhelmed and tired, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what negative people do, is they just suck the life out of you, and it can be a family member, it can be a friend, it can be a coworker. it can even be the cashier at the grocery store who's just in
Yeah,
a bad mood and taking it out on you.
absolutely.
So,
So,
yeah.
Rosalind, what do you think brings about this inner negativity in people?
Well, the negativity that we're kind of talking about here is like a form of pessimism. Yeah, it's the opposite of optimism, basically. And it can come from, fear of being unloved or being disrespected. It or that some bad things are going to happen. So people who focus on, if I do this, this is definitely, they just spiral down into all the bad things that could happen if they try something instead of the good things. And they can bring you down too. They can really, you know, mess with your positive thinking, your normal positive thinking, because they can be very, very forceful with their beliefs that, something's going to go wrong, or that you don't love them, or you don't love them properly, or whatever it is, right? So
Right,
and that turns into kind of a form of pessimism and neediness and anxiety, and it can even um, be a way of trying to control you. You know, so that's what we kind of mean by negativity
mhm.
in this case.
And so, what you're saying is that, the person, so this person doesn't always look like they're getting ready to say something negative. But it shows up,
Yeah,
when they're interacting with you in ways like they're just being very needy or clingy, or,
yeah,
trying to control you.
yeah. That's
Yeah,
right. That's right.
yeah.
And that can come off in subtle passive aggressive almost ways, by just the things they say.
Mhm,
um if they want you to do a favor for them, for example, and you can't, well, their response can be quite snippy and
mhm,
quite, because they're feeling rejected, right? Because you can't help them at that moment. So
mhm,
there goes that fear of being unloved, of being
mhm.
disrespected, and that takes over their thought process.
Wow. I never
Yeah.
really, really thought about it like that. So, Rosalind, talk a little bit about how these negative behaviors then of these people that we encounter, how it actually affects us.
So, the human brain is designed to mimic people. It's open to mimicry. And so when you're around people, um you actually start taking on some of their characteristics, and especially the more familiar you are with the person, right?
Kind of like
So
that, as they say, that one bad apple can spoil the
yeah,
whole bunch. Yes.
that's exactly what it is. And so you are maybe go in there with a very upbeat kind of way, but the people or the person around you, that you're interacting with, are the exact opposite. And eventually your brain will pay attention to that,
Mhm.
and you'll start mimicking their breathing habits, you'll start mimicking their body language, um and their tone of voice, and you don't uh, it's mostly those things that you start mimicking, those things that are really tangible that you can see. The emotions are not something you can tangibly see, but they're lying underneath all of that.
Mhm.
And that you will start mirroring their emotions as well, because they are part of that whole body language, tone of voice thing. And underneath that is the emotion. And you start experiencing the emotion that you picked up on through their body language and through
Mhm.
their tone of voice. So that's you become contaminated by it basically, and that's what I call emotional contagion.
Mhm.
And emotional contagion doesn't have to be negative. It can actually be positive. Like
Yeah,
if you're at a sporting event and everybody's cheering around you, right?
yeah,
That's a positive emotional contagion. So it's not just negative. Emotional contagion happens because your brain is wired for it to happen. So
right. Or like seeing that newborn baby, or being
yeah.
at a wedding, or
Yeah.
I've even, I never really thought about it being contagious, but I can remember it's been some years ago, but I can remember moving to a new city. I hadn't been there even a month. But I went to a funeral with my then boyfriend, who is now my husband. And I'm telling you, I was in there crying like a baby. And my husband was like, "You don't even know." But
Yeah.
it was like, it was like the saddest. It was the funeral of a teenager. And so it
Mhm.
was just the saddest thing that I had ever, and the people cried. I mean, that I had never seen such, I mean, even like men crying. I don't think I had seen that. And I think that probably struck me the most, but they just cried the entire funeral. And I found myself just crying as well, you
Yeah.
know?
Great
Yeah.
example of emotional contagion there. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So, so how, Rosalind, since this is contagious, I want to make sure that it does not get all over me. I do have some strategies of my own, but can you give us some tips on how we can actually avoid or get away from or protect ourselves from this emotional contagion?
I think for me, the number one way to do that is to make sure your energy levels are high enough before you get into that react. If you're going to a place where there's going to be a lot of emotions that can possibly take over, whether that's a conversation with a loved one that just drives you nuts, or whether it's a funeral, make sure that you're going in there in your feeling the most positive sense you can possibly feel at that time. It's a great sort of armor to put on, is that ability uh to see the positive even though people are spewing negativity at you.
Mm-hmm.
And the stronger you make that armor, the more you're going to be able to withstand the attack of the emotional negative contagion. So yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so, if you actually get yourself into a position where for example, with me, when I'm thinking about my example of my mother, one of the things I've learned to do is call her more frequently, um, for shorter periods of time, because that neediness in her is being met even by short conversations, instead of storing up, because my gut reaction is to avoid calling her because I just don't want to deal with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead, I pick my times when I'm going to engage with her because I know my emotional armor is strong at that time.
Right.
And I do it more frequently so that the conversations can be shorter, so that her negative emotional contagion has less opportunity to seep underneath my armor of
Mm-hmm.
positivity. So that's one way to do it, is if you know that you're going to be in a situation where the person coming at you is going to create a lot of that frustration and anger because they're just so needy or so pessimistic or so unable to see anything positive in their life. um, just try and keep the interactions short if you can, so
Yeah.
that and the second you start feeling your frustrations levels rise, you start feeling sadness set in. um Find a way to extricate yourself from the conversation, even if only for a few minutes. Like if you're at a family gathering and Uncle Ted or whatever is always doomsdaying that the end of the world is coming or whatever. Find a nice, polite way to just extricate yourself from the conversation. Same with coworkers. You can do the same thing with them. So have an exit strategy. That's your favorite line, right,
I was
Teresa?
just getting ready to say, now you're treading on my territory now about those exit strategies, because I'm telling you, I go to the bathroom. I'm telling you,
Yeah, that's right.
when you go to
Yep.
the bathroom, you're the only person in there, and I will excuse myself to the bathroom in a minute if I just, if I find myself caught. But I'm always prepared with either there's an appointment I have to get to, or I use my husband a lot, that we were planning on doing something after this. So I need to, go ahead and wrap things up. Or, if I'm on the phone, look, somebody's at my door, or I'm receiving another call, and, I, and if you're one of those people that say, oh, I don't want to lie, and say that I have to go to a meeting when I really don't, let me tell you the secret to that. You say, I have to go to a meeting, and then as soon as you're away from them, you say, Self, how are you doing? Oh, Teresa, I'm doing fine. That's great. Meeting is adjourned. I just had a meeting with myself.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
did
and
not lie. It's
yeah,
important that I check in right now to get
and
out of
yeah,
the situation.
and if you're at a family function or a business function or something like that, where you're in a room full of people and you get stuck with the most pessimistic person in the room, you can always just say, oh, look, I see so and so over there. I haven't talked to them in ages.
Absolutely.
Pardon me. It's been nice chatting with you, and I want to make sure I say hello to everybody, kind of
Right.
thing.
And just move yourself around. But
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you know that it's have your exit strategies already planned,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
definitely.
And when you go off to the washroom, one of the things you can do is check in with yourself, check in with your breathing. Has your breathing become more rapid? Has your heart rate gone up? Has your and slow your breathing down
Mhm.
um when you're there. And then and this is a good trick, even if you can't extricate yourself and you start noticing the blood starting to boil in yourself. Remember that the brain is wired for mimicry, and so instead of mimicking their anxiety, try and calm yours down, calm your breathing down, start breathing more regularly, um, and be compassionate with them, empathize with them, but don't own their anxiety.
Absolutely.
And you'd be surprised how often just those two things, slowing your breathing down and showing some empathy, can actually make that person who's just going on and on about all the bad things in their life and in the world and everything, they actually start mimicking you,
Mhm.
because you're modeling the behavior you'd like to see in them. And humor helps too sometimes.
Mhm.
Just like negativity can be an emotional contagion, so can positivity. And so a smile goes a long way, a laugh, a little distraction from the story. One trick I do is try to get the person talking about something, if you know them well enough, something
Mhm.
makes them happy, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
And
and
when you were saying that, I was thinking about it now. We haven't talked about that on this podcast, but my professional background is as a nurse.
mm,
And I can tell you how that there have been countless times when I've encountered a patient who was like super anxious or having a lot of
sure.
pain, or the family is distraught. And so their energy is one way, but what I learned to do was to continue to just speak to them in a calm tone.
Exactly.
Every time I answered a question, to always speak in a calm tone when I would give them instructions to continue with that. And pretty soon I found that they did. Always, typically, they would always come down to where I was, and they would calm down, and we could get to a resolution, and they will feel more assured. So that, and then that also works well in relationships.
It does.
If
Yeah.
you're with your mate or your significant other or even just a friend in some way, in all situations, and someone is like overly excited, it seems like if you speak in the tone that you're really looking to hear, that, or if you become a little bit more quiet and don't just, you know,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that seems to, that really does help. That's great. And then another thing that I do now, I have this thing that I call trash pickup day, and I say, listen, all trash belongs in the trash can. And this is something so simple that anyone can use. And I tell people all the time, and they think that, some think that it's crazy, but those that have tried it, I mean, I was at a doctor's office one day, and this lady was really just, she was crying, and she just seemed to be going through all this whatever. And so as I was speaking to her, she was having some type of conflict with her daughter. And so I told her, I said, go to the reception desk and ask for a trash can and some sticky notes. And she was like, what? And she did it. She went, got a trash can. She got sticky notes. They just gave her a whole little pad of sticky notes, and she got an ink pen. So I told her, okay, everything that you are feeling about your daughter right now negatively, write it on a sticky note. And as she would write something on a sticky note, I would say, okay, ball it up and throw it in the trash can. And I am telling you, she took that and she went back to her seat, and it was hilarious because before it was over with, there was like trash, sticky notes on the floor because she was throwing them. She was getting so excited about the relief that that gave her. But that also, I mean, if there's like this lingering negativity, or
Yeah.
even just the negativity that sometimes we can have in ourselves,
Yeah.
just that symbolism of throwing it away,
Yeah. Yeah.
seems
Yeah.
to help sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's along that same line. It's really, really important to know that you should not own that other person's negativity or
Absolutely.
pessimism or neediness. It's not yours, it's theirs. And so you mentally, when they push it at you, you just mentally go, okay, it's
No,
empty into the trash can.
I'm telling you, look, I'm gonna have to put a picture of it up, but I have like me as Superwoman, and you remember, not Superwoman, but Wonder Woman, and back in the day, Wonder Woman had this shield, right, and it looked like those aluminum trash cans,
Yeah,
the top, the
the
lid of it.
tops of them. Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like, I'm walking around like this, and I don't even get the trash in my trash can, so I don't have to throw it out. So I'm like blocking it. And,
yes. And
and
that's, yeah,
and we definitely find that, like what you're talking about with your mom, with me, certainly, like my husband come home from a long day and he's stressed out about something at work, and then that transference is coming my way. No, no, no,
yeah,
no.
yeah. Yeah, and that I called it, yeah, at the beginning I was talking about your emotional armor, and you
Exactly.
just, especially when you're dealing with somebody who's in a bad mood, who's trying to make you feel their hate or their anxiety or their frustration or whatever. You don't have to own that. Put up
Mhm.
that shield, zip up your armor, let it bounce off you. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, Rosalind. So you know what? We're gonna do a rapid fire question and answer
Okay.
session. All right.
I got my
So
armor on.
so I'm going to give you some scenarios in which we face negativity. And what I want you to do is give us some tips on how we can handle it. What is it that we need to do in these situations? Okay.
Sure.
All right. So the first one is about how to handle negativity at work. So we all know that oftentimes people leave their jobs, right? They quit, but then they go to a very similar job, just doing the exact same thing. And so, it would stand to reason that people aren't leaving the job because they dislike the job or don't want to do the work, but oftentimes it has to do with the people at work. So how do we handle that?
So, yeah, and I mean, that's very common that the atmosphere at work can make you feel really negative because some of your coworkers just, they're always complaining. I was going to use a B word there, but I caught myself. They're they're always complaining about something or other. They're never satisfied with anything in the workplace. So what you can do, practice some of those things we've already talked about. Making sure that you fill up your positivity shell armor as frequently as possible throughout the workday. And you know, one thing you can do is surround yourself somehow. Like if you have a desk, have them on your desk. Although I know more and more workplaces are suggesting you don't have personal items on your desk, so keep them in your briefcase or your purse or something. But have have some mementos there that can help you reconnect to things that are joyful in your life. So one thing I have, like a little stone that my partner gave me that's heart shaped, and it's been polished and it's really smooth, and I can easily pop that into my pocket. And when things start, when I can feel my teeth starting to grind because that person is driving me nuts, I can just kind of put my hand in the pocket and play, with the rock. Calms you down.
Mhm.
If you're a parent and your kids have painted pictures for you, or written you a nice note or whatever, keep those around you as well in your workspace somehow. Anything really that brings you joy, and try to reconnect to them as frequently as possible throughout the workday, to remind yourself that your life does not only exist of this um, space in with these people who are constantly throwing negativity your way.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. Well, then what about if the negativity seems to really be coming from your friends?
That's a little bit trickier. It's complicated in many, many ways. I mean, we talked about discreetly, gently, and compassionately ending the interaction if you're constantly dealing with somebody who wants to just fill you up with all the negative things in their life, and who has no sense of the ability to talk about positive things in their life. You So remember some of those techniques: the breathing, the distancing yourself, humor, smiling, trying to distract them with other things. But also, if this is becoming a regular habit between you and the friend, where the friend just knows they can call you and dump on you for an hour, and every time you meet for coffee, that's all it's about is negativity, maybe step back and evaluate that relationship from a different perspective. So what need do they fulfill in your life? Do they allow you to fulfill your need to be the caretaker? A lot of us grew up with that caretaker mentality where we want to solve everybody else's problems. And so maybe this friend, um, you're actually secretly attracted to this friend because you can make yourself feel better by taking care of them. What does it serve? Does it boost your ego to be taking care of them, to be solving their problems? And these aren't easy questions to ask yourself. They're not easy questions, but you have to decide whether that constant negative relationship is worth it to you.
Mhm,
um, and look for the reasons why you stay in the relationship.
mhm, mhm, mhm. That's good. Well, what about external things or indirect contact with things that cause you, or people that cause you to be negative, such as social media or television?
Those things are a lot more in your control than people, the people around you, whether they are your coworkers, whether they're a relative, whether they're a friend. But you have to be disciplined. You have to know that tuning into the 24-hour news feed is going to bring about a sense of negativity. How often do you get a feel good story on those 24-hour news feeds? That's not what they're there for. They're there for the sensationalism. And all that sensationalism is going to affect you because it's not fun sensationalism. It's by and large all negative stuff. And same thing on social media. You can be scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and there will be a lot of people out there doing that B word I avoided before on social
Exactly.
media. All of those things can breed negativity in you because that's all you're hearing all the time.
Right. Absolutely.
So along with that, that shield that you carry, or that suit of armor that you wear of positivity, the shield to deflect these things, remember to discipline yourself to limit your time
Hmm.
watching that
Hmm.
news feed, limit your time reading all those negative social media posts, replace them with things that actually boost your positivity instead. And we've talked about self-care so many times already on our
Yes.
very short life of this podcast, because it's something both of us so firmly believe in. But take take a break from all that negativity and practice a little self-care. It will boost your positivity, it will boost your energy, and distance you from that constant barrage of
Yes.
negativity we get. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Even if whatever it is something that you enjoy. So see, this is a twist. And I say that because I really love watching like the crime channel that has is telling all these real life stories about people being murdered. And on the weekends, I typically don't watch it till the weekend, but I'm telling you, I can watch it. I mean, I can start out as soon as I get up in the morning all the way to the time I go to bed at night. But what I found was that as interesting as the stories were, and I mean, I'm leaned in like, oh my goodness, oh this, and I'm just involved. Clean up on the commercials and run back. Uh, and but after an entire weekend, by Sunday evening, I'm almost fearful. I want to sleep with
Mhm.
all the lights on. I started to see that that was happening. And so, I've had to kind of cut back on it, even though, doesn't have anything to do with me, but it's still, that stuff is negative. And,
Yeah,
you have to really just be self aware. So that goes
that's
with our
right.
self care,
Yeah.
being self aware, of these emotions that you're
Yeah.
having.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
So good on you for recognizing the source of your fear, and for doing something about it. And that really is key, is to you need to be able to recognize when the negativity that you're feeding on, whether that's coming from people around you or TV, you need to be able to recognize when it's affecting your mood, when it's affecting your way of thinking, and do something to stop it. Do something that brings you back to a more sense of
Mhm.
positivity and calm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I
Yeah.
might skip a weekend, but then I'm right back. But I
Yeah.
you have to give yourself a break. That is definitely, next thing you know, I'm watching home and garden television, just something to kind of
Yeah.
switch that off. So now
Exactly.
our last question, I'm gonna dig just a little bit deeper. And this is for the people in our audience that are saying, you know what, they're over there talking about this and they're laughing. And this is easier said than done. These tips that are this is easy for them. How do you personally handle negativity?
So, I don't know if I actually came right out and directly said this, but my mother really is the biggest source of negativity in my life. She's 87 years old. She's had a very, very tough life. She has not had it easy. She left my abusive alcoholic father with 7 kids between the ages of 4.5 and 15 years in 1972, before the world recognized
Mhm.
the kind of things that go on behind closed doors. So she has had it, and she didn't have an easy childhood, grew up during the war in Newfoundland where there were rations and U-boats off the shore and all. So she has not had an easy life. So I understand. And that was it, is that I have to understand the source of her negativity. Um, but I don't have to own it, right?
Mhm.
So I can feel a little bit sense of compassion for her because of that, but I have to remember that before. So before I go into any conversation or any interaction where my mother's going to be there, I make sure that I've done things that boost my energy levels. So I've done some self-care routines. I've had my morning coffee. It can be as simple as that. Have my morning coffee in peace, then I can phone my mother. If she phones me while I'm having my morning coffee, I know not to answer the phone because I
Mhm.
know my brain is not ready yet to receive that
Right.
kind of negativity.
Mhm.
And by doing that, I can allow my resources to be depleted by her negativity a little bit without harming myself. I make a conscious effort to control my breathing, to not feed on her anxiety, to not, when she starts getting worked up, to not get worked up. And that's a tough thing for us to do. We talked about that, right? it's
Mhm.
it's tough. You can be it's you have to do this with everybody just about in your life at some
Right.
point or another.
Mhm.
But I you know I it, I I've lost my train of thought. That's terrible. um
Well,
um
I'll
I've
tell you.
I've cleared my mind.
You cleared it out. Well, I tell you, as I mentioned before, some of the secrets are the things that I do as far as negativity. Because as a matter of fact, as positive as I am, I went through a period where I just had this negative chatter that was just going
Yeah,
on in my head. So it really wasn't necessarily that someone was doing or saying to me. It could have been how I was perceiving it, or
yeah,
what, or my own background, or whatever it was that was going on. But I just found myself having a lot of negative conversations, um with just things going on in my head. And so one day I just really just got tired of it, because what was happening was I was having a negative conversation, thus that was making me interact
yeah,
negatively with other people, and the other people
exactly,
really didn't even understand where I was even coming from. And
exactly.
so, I look, I went all in with affirmations, or with words that I wanted to hear to just kind of change things up for me. And so I, Googled some affirmations, printed them out, put them in picture frames, had them all over the house. But my and every day I would sit in this room and read these words. And after a while, it really just changed. So now I don't have that negative conversation
Yeah.
anymore. But when I feel like that negativity, I have around here, we have trash pickup day. So my
Yep.
trash pickup day is Thursday. See, I have like all these. I look. I needed the help, so I created trash pickup day, and on Thursdays, because the thing about what we are talking about negativity is that we have a habit of carrying that stuff around,
We
right?
do. Yeah.
And so what I thought about was, you're carrying every day in every aspect of our lives. Quite honestly, there's something that occurs that's negative in our
Yeah.
work life, in our family life, in our, relationship life or
That's right.
interaction.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things that happen that are negative, whether it's a look that somebody gave you, or a tone that you, or whatever. And we have a tendency to just hold those things
We
in.
do.
So
Yeah.
I created trash pickup day for myself. And on Thursdays, I know for sure that I'm going to empty out everything. So on top of those, using those sticky notes and all that kind of stuff, those were some things that I have used, but ongoing. I use trash pickup day. But I
Yes.
do walk around with that trash can lid, trying to block my trash can in the first place.
Yeah, and all of those things are incredible ways to build up your positivity suit of armor that will
Mhm,
protect you from all the negativity that surrounds you on a daily basis. You have to remember that um, you have control over how you're going to react to the negative voice in your head, to somebody else's negative voice, to the TV's negative stream of consciousness. You know, it's it's within your power
mhm,
to to control how you react to that stuff. And you can let it eat you alive,
mhm.
but you don't have to,
Yeah. But
you really
Rosalind,
don't
give
have
us some takeaways. What's going to be our takeaway for today? We always want everyone to have a takeaway.
So I think what I'd like to stress to everybody is to remember that you are not responsible for other people's feelings.
Mm,
Um, you may not be able to help all the negative people in your life, but you can empathize with them without owning their negativity, as long as you've built yourself up before you join them. Um, and remember that they're coming from a place that is their own little miserable world that, you know, is created for many reasons you may never understand, but
mhm,
it's their world, not yours.
mhm, mhm. And
Yeah,
don't take it personal.
exactly. Don't take it
Yes,
personally.
yes.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
look, we could talk on and on and on. And you know what? As you were talking about that, I was like, oh, here's another episode.
yeah, that's
Something,
right.
something to talk about. But guys, if you have enjoyed this, I hope that you have gotten some practical tips, go-to tools that you can institute right away today. If you are facing any negativity, please, if you enjoyed this podcast, spread the word, share it around with others. If you don't know, we do have a Relentless Transitions YouTube channel. You can go back there and listen to the playback. All of our contact information is there, and we will list it. And for this episode, Rosalind, how about we give them some highlights, just some bullet point tips on
Sure.
things
Yeah.
to handle negativity, because in this world right now today, there is so much negativity going around, and I know that we can use this. So thank you, Rosalind, for all of those tips. So guys, this is the end of another episode. We hate to leave you, but we hope that you will come back and join us again. My name is Teresa Carthren, and my co-host is today is Ms. Rosalind Key. And you can reach us at relentlesstransitions@gmail.com. And actually, we're not going to give you the IG just yet. We're going to establish an IG for the Relentless Transitions podcast so that all of your questions can come just to one location. So we look forward to it, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening, everyone.